The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Some varied stories to discuss with you on the bonus show today. First of which is that Congressman Jim Jordan, this Republican congressman who is known for very aggressively questioning people during House hearings. I guess like he kind of likes to make a name for himself as the tough guy, right? In some sense.
That's his thing, right? I mean, he's pretty sharp, pretty quick-witted.
Yeah.
But yeah, he went after Andrew McCabe during a recent testimony. He went after Hillary Clinton during the countless Benghazi hearings.
Oh, of
That's
course.
his thing.
Yeah, he likes to try to get clips of him questioning people in the news, kind of like Trey Gowdy in that way. He now is accused of ignoring allegations of sexual abuse while a wrestling coach at Ohio State. I had no idea that Jim Jordan was previously a wrestling coach. That for me was the most shocking revelation from this. Not so much that he might have ignored sexual assault allegations.
And that he was a champion wrestler in his own right, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Who knew?
And when he was a coach at Ohio State, we now have learned there are rampant allegations of sexual abuse having taken place there. And as the story goes, he is not, to my knowledge, Pat, being accused of participating in any sexual assault at this point. But the accusation is that he was aware of it and failed to act on the fact that these allegations were being made. He, of course, is completely denying it. Whether he's credible or not, I guess remains to be seen.
Yeah, I wonder if it just wasn't taken very seriously at the time, because this would be many, many years ago. And maybe, I know it sounds horrible to say, but, you know, sexual assaults against, you know, people who are maybe young, at college age, but still, you know, susceptible to things, right?
Locker room scenario.
Maybe that was, thought of as like a locker room scenario, funny, even something to joke about.
Yeah.
And the times have just changed.
You know, when we talk about the Penn State guy, Jerry Sandusky, right, who ultimately was, without any question, found to have been involved in the sexual assault of football players in the locker room. That was happening over such a long period of time that the perception of it at the beginning was drastically different than the perception of it later on, because times have changed. And I'm not excusing anything, to be clear. Like, you're not saying that this is any less bad if it happened at a time when it was more acceptable. We're just saying there was a time where this type of thing was more acceptable and it just wasn't seen as what it is today. I don't think it's an excuse at all, but I think that the only way that Jim Jordan could escape culpability, if it's demonstrated that he was aware that these allegations were being made, would be if, because of the times, the allegations being made simply weren't getting to him as being as serious as we now know them to be, right? Like, it wouldn't be an excuse if he heard that people were being raped and did nothing. The mitigating factor would be if by the time it got back to him, whatever it was that was going on was being presented as the equivalent of towel snapping or something like that, which doesn't make it okay, but it just makes it so that because of the times, the story he was getting was not as serious as maybe what was taking place.
Well, the problem is it's all hearsay, right? It's multiple people alleging that he knew about it but did nothing.
Right.
And when these allegations go back decades, right, quite a long time ago, there's probably no way to prove that he had any knowledge. Apparently, he joked that if, you know, this coach tried anything on him, that he would put an end to it.
Yeah.
So that kind of admits that he knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But Trump actually has his back on this one. Not really
of course.
a surprise.
Not surprisingly whatsoever, no. And now that Bill Shine from Fox News has joined the White House, he will be able to do apologetics for not only Donald Trump's alleged sexual improprieties, but also maybe Jim Jordan's. You think this will take Jordan down? I think unless it goes further, I don't think it's going to.
No, I mean, I don't think he would have to resign from this. Maybe the voters in Ohio, would say that we don't want this guy representing us anymore.
Out,
but we'll see that in November.
We learned yesterday about the passing of former MSNBC host Ed Schultz, who was as of late working on Russian state television station RT. He was 64 years old, and as the articles state, he passed away of natural causes. And we have a lot of sort of mutual contacts and friends with Ed Schultz. Ed Schultz is good friends with Mike Papantonio down from Levin Papantonio law firm in Pensacola, Florida. And Ed Schultz was a frequent a mainstay of the Las Vegas conference that I attend twice a year. I met him a couple of times, did not know him well. And, I don't know anything about Ed Schultz's health history, but what I read when I hear about died of natural causes, he was a guy who was not exactly thin. I assume that it's, a sort of heart disease, heart attack type thing, and maybe ultimately we'll learn about it.
He was only 64 years old, too. Yeah. Sounds pretty young to die of natural causes.
I think now natural causes, if someone dies of a heart attack in their sleep, I think it's called natural causes. And I don't know if that is a new thing, but it feels to me that if you have a heart attack at age 64, natural causes to me means more that I don't know, I imagine your heart gives out from real old age, not that you have an acute heart attack at age 64. But I think by and large now it is convention to say that it's natural causes if you die of a heart attack in your 60s.
Yeah, I think it's more about the privacy of the family, right? That's what they'll put out to the newspapers.
That also is sometimes the case. Yeah.
But it's never listed as a reason of death, right? It's usually like heart failure or cancer or Alzheimer's, whatever it is. Right. It's not like if you see the list that natural causes is going to be on there.
Yep. And I don't know if in October at the Las Vegas conference there will be some kind of in memoriam sort of thing around Ed Schultz. I know that our friends down in Pensacola who knew Ed more were saddened more acutely because of the personal connection. And I was never really a fan of his work in terms of his program. I never found his MSNBC show interesting. And of course, I don't watch RT, nor do we use RT as a source for anything on the show. So since moving to RT, not work I was very much aware of. But we do know his producer, Brent, longtime producer, who's a great guy. And I know that he's saddened. And so condolences to everybody who knew Ed. I mean, certainly one of the more, at least when he was on talk radio, prominent Democratic, if not super leftist voices of talk radio.
Did you know that during the 1990s, he was actually a conservative right-wing talk show host?
Yep.
So he had a political transformation of his own.
Yeah.
Similar to, it's like the reverse Rubin. That's what I would call it.
Yeah, and case in point, it's much less notable when someone goes from right to left. Like Cenk Uygur used to be a right-winger, now he's a left-winger. Ed Schultz used to be a right-winger, now he's a left-winger. The left just sees it as obvious that you should eventually find your way to the left. So it's not like this big thing of fanfare. It's much more rare for someone to be sort of an involved leftist and then say, you know what, I've been wrong all along, I'm going to become a conservative, which is, I think, why it's much more lucrative to do it that way.
Or is it more that the Democratic Party has moved to the right over time? Like it used to be much more ideological, with like the George McGovern era of like the 70s. And then when Bill Clinton came around, he was advocating for like a third way, more of a centrist party. In 2000, we had Al Gore as the nominee, and he wasn't really seen as too much of a progressive, except for like maybe climate change. And that's around the time where both Ed Schultz and Cenk Uygur went from being on the right to the left. So I think it could be a mix of both. Yeah.
Quite a little hypothesis you've put together there. I'm not so sure about it, but it is an interesting one. No, I mean, I think there's something to what you're saying, although whether I would draw all of those exact connections remains to be seen. But I'm going to think on that one over the weekend. Michael Avenatti, Stormy Daniels' attorney. Although, is he even her attorney anymore? I think maybe he's...
Did they have a falling out?
Did they have a falling out as well? Michael Avenatti, in tweets and interviews over the 4th of July holiday, said that he would run against Donald Trump if Trump seeks re-election, and no one else steps up with a good chance of defeating him. I think that's the big if that's not being as widely reported. The headlines are, Avenatti says he might run against Trump. And obviously Avenatti would I think we would agree, stand no chance in hell of becoming president of the United States, right?
I really hope not. And I also hope that we don't make the Stormy Daniels thing a campaign issue.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting because not only the president had an affair, that's one thing, but also that he lied about it, and that there may have been a campaign finance violation. So, you can definitely investigate it, look into it, but it shouldn't take him down. It shouldn't even cost him re-election by itself, you know what I mean?
Not by itself, but certainly if crimes were committed, we want to make sure that those crimes are prosecuted. But I think that this is just Avenatti getting attention. If there's one thing he's good at a lot of things, but what he's particularly good at is getting attention. And he said, if he seeks re-election, I will run. but only if I think that there's no other candidate in the race that has a real chance of beating him. And I assume that we are going to have a candidate in 2020 that is going to have a good chance of beating Trump. You might still lose 55 to 45, or more likely something like 48 to 45, or maybe even win by 3 or 4 million votes, but still lose the electoral vote. But I think that Avenatti is going to be satisfied that there is going to be someone with a better shot than him of defeating Trump in 2020.
I would certainly hope so. I hope this is just a desperate plea for attention. It is pretty sad. I know we've talked about how we don't want to discuss the 2020 election yet because the midterms are right ahead of us.
Never discuss.
But I hate the names being floated, like Michelle Obama, like Oprah Winfrey, Michael Avenatti, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yeah.
Can we please get over these celebrity candidates and get some people who actually know about policy and our experience?
See, that's the thing. Now that Trump won, everybody's saying, well, maybe Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would be the guy. I don't even know if he would run as a Democrat or as a Republican. I have no idea what the guy's politics are. And when we get a lot of live calls where callers will say, do we think that Donald Trump has sort of opened the door to this new type of political candidate? And the answer is yes, but that could mean two things. Do we mean someone as crass and uneducated as Trump? Or do we mean just the idea of a celebrity? And I would say yes to both. I think both are now on the table. The thing is, Trump never would have won a Democratic primary. And that's where I think there's confusion. Just because Trump won as a Republican doesn't mean Trump's equivalent on the left would win, because Democratic voters have a totally different way of thinking about what makes a good candidate. So I think it would be a huge mistake to go in that direction.
Trump's election victory was a big win for dumb, bigoted people the world over, and some will take solace in that and be inspired.
And that's where a lot of the cognitive dissonance is coming from, which is that as Trump increasingly bamboozles them, moving away from all of the campaign promises that he made, they are not going to allow themselves to come to terms with the reality that they were tricked or that this guy is incompetent. And if anything, it will actually get them to double down in their support for Trump. And we're actually seeing that. Although Republican support for Trump has trickled a little bit, a lot of Republicans, most Republicans, aggressively and strongly support Donald Trump still.
I think among millennial men, Donald Trump is more popular than not. So we always talk about how the young people have to get out to vote.
Yeah.
Has to be the right young people.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so worried about November of 2018. But we'll talk about that more next week. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to all of our new members over the last week. We'll be back with a brand new full week of shows on Monday.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.